Abusuani komo ewo channel so how say age politics avenue. Podcast or trend because make headlines na jembre na edibi exum woni dim nya ho braksiemu yanko political highways nim ejedem enya asem koto akra na Afenyo Markins akasa omu demand for immediate release of Abronye a wonua enya asem koto akra na mbesho say yembo enwura eye na so eye abra oni NPP amayekuo no Štǒrm life a enya asem koto akra. Channel so mami say I say age politics avenue yembo enwura eye insemfoni.
Welcome back to Ghana Tonight here on TV3 and on 392.7 FM. Tonight, the NPP makes a loud attempt for the release of the party's Bono region chairman, Kwame Bafo, also known as Abronye DC, who is now on remand in BNI custody for 2 weeks. He's also facing charges including offensive conduct, false publication with intent to cause fear and panic, and threatening judicial officers. Excuse me. But the NPP disagrees with Abronye's continued detention, insisting recent developments point to a deliberate pattern to silence dissent. Yes, Minority Leader Afenyo Markin on this matter.
A communicator of a party is arrested. An organizer is picked up there. A regional chairman is remanded into security remand. The message spreads quietly through every rank of the opposition. This is what dissent costs. The Mahama administration has calculated that intimidating NPP communicators and silencing its regional leadership will allow it to govern without accountability and shield its mounting incompetence from scrutiny. It will not work. We make the following demands, and they are non-negotiable. First, Mr. Kwame Bafo Abronye must be released from BNI custody immediately. His detention is constitutionally indefensible and must end today. Parliament's Constitutional, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs Committee shall, upon assumption of Parliament, be made through an application to summon the Inspector General of Police, the Director General of BNI to publicly account for every decision taken in this matter. The Chief Justice is not also above the law. They must all be answerable. And let the majority know this. In the effort by the minority in ensuring this is done, they should not try to stampede it. It is good for democracy, and we call on the majority to support it.
More of that in later broadcasts, but this is how we end tonight's edition of the program.
And indeed, the reality is that these are very, very common tricks. So the more practice is, as we say, a subculture. It is not an outlier, except that the system has deficiencies in physically identifying them because of the limited deployment to monitor. I'm talking about limited external deployment to monitor. It is not just an issue of some teachers demanding money from students and promising to assist them. But when it comes to BECE specifically, because the choice of school is at stake, mind you, that BECE is only relevant today because of school placement. Because the choice of school is at stake, and learners at the junior high school level are very, 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 fussy about the choice of school or the school they want to go. Some may go an extra, length to do anything possible, including what we just saw, to pass and get to the school of their choice. It requires a lot of education, including moral education, not just in the school environment, because these tendencies actually, may have, emerged from the house. So the student spends more time at home than in school. So it will require more education and moral education from both the household and then the school environment to imbibe into students the essence of integrity when it comes to assessment and also life in general.
But you see, you're talking about this starting from home, but we've seen a number of instances, and you've been involved in this, where the parents who are the leaders at home are actually the ones who are leading the process of paying for exam answers and so on.
That's the point. That's the point. Because in all this, this examination of practice thing, it's transactional. And you'll agree with me that, between 300 and 1,000 cedis being paid in some schools from BECE to WASI, those funds are not funds that students or learners can easily come by. Having mobile phones in the examination hall at the junior high school level just to ensure that answers are transmitted to you. Those are not, easy costs that one who is not working can actually shoulder. And so evidence available indicates that behind every organized examination or practice, especially institutionalized coalition in schools, there is, a parental support in the name of what a BECE support fee. Parents themselves know that the fee they are paying is, ominous, but they still go ahead and pay. And so that's why I was quick to say that the household factors play a lot more into this than even the school factors, because the demand is more or less from the household. And so far as the demand is there, they are ready to commit funds. Supply will emerge from the school, because some bad teachers also just want the cash. And then, so both sides, their responsibilities to show that when it comes to re-engineering the psyche of our students, to appreciate integrity.
Education system and what recommendations that you're making right now. And I want to get into that, because that's an issue as well that some have expressed some divergent views on as to what should not be the case based on the recommendations that you have made. You said rethinking the structure and relevance of the BECE in the era of free SHS. Now, you're talking about candidates typically needing at least aggregate 35 to gain admission, and less than 65% were meeting this threshold. In effect, BECE functioned as a screening exam that separated those who passed to progress to secondary school from those who did not. Now, we've seen free SHS being introduced. About 98% of candidates qualify annually for secondary education. And you said candidates with aggregate 54 are all in school. True? BECE, they score aggregate 54 and they are in secondary school?
Alfred, the reality is that BECE is no longer relevant in determining whether one qualifies to go to secondary school. In the past, decades ago, until 2017, to be precise, BECE was instrumental in more or less determining whether you qualify to proceed to second cycle education. So it was what we call a second cycle entrance examination. That was the first essence of BECE. Then it was also a school placement examination, which went further after clearing that you qualify to proceed to second cycle. The result was used to determine which category of school you qualify to be placed in. So these were the two main functions of BECE. Now, and then you had to attain up to aggregate 35, to qualify to assess second cycle. And then beyond the 35, your actual grade would determine the kind of school you are likely to attend. But since free senior high school was introduced, cutoffs were removed. Immediately the cutoffs were removed, essentially, it meant that the first function is moot. It means that everyone who writes BECE is qualified to go to secondary school. And that is the norm in all countries implementing free secondary education in Africa.
So in effect, you're saying that the BECE should be done away with if that first function of it pruning the numbers to second is off now.
Now, if that first function is off, the second function is the only leg which BECE is standing on. And indeed, BECE's only relevance since 2018 has been to determine who goes to Presec, from who goes to Benkum, from who goes to Canton Senior High School. That's the only relevance. And so the point we've been making since 2023, as a matter of fact, is that if at the time when BECE was bifocal, serving two purposes, it was designed in such a way that you write a high stakes examination in up to 10 papers. Why do we still have to maintain that same form if BECE is no longer serving the purpose of secondary school entrance examination, but it's only being used to determine who goes to a category A school or a category B school? Because in other countries, for instance, they use aptitude tests and then continuous assessment to determine who goes to a category A school, a category B school. But that exercise is not one that requires ascertaining one's proficiency in every subject. And so the point we are making is that as the relevance of BECE has changed and now hinges on only its school placement function, we must also review the form of BECE to reflect the only remaining relevance, which is
relevance of it. I see, and beyond the question of the structure, you make a recommendation and you're asking a question that because of the shift in relevance now, why do candidates still sit 10 subjects over a 5-day period for what is essentially a placement exercise? So what's the recommendation in here? I mean, because now, yes, the students are sitting for 10 subjects over 5 days. Are you talking about an extension of the days or a total review of this entire structure?
So doing 10 subjects is virtually a proficiency test, and that's not the essence, okay? Because we are only determining, you only want to know, determine who goes to a category A school, a category B school. That is not a proficiency test, which is not an examination. It is not an secondary education entrance examination either. And so we are recommending that it is important to maintain the core subject as standalone, especially maths, English, and science. So let's maintain them and assess them as they are. But for the rest of the subjects, let's make them into a general paper, which will contain relevant sections so that no one will say, I'm not going to learn this subject, I'm going to learn only this.
Right.
So that we encourage learning. So that we're going to have 4 papers. Now, if we have 4 papers being written to determine who goes to category A or category B, then we reduce the number of days we spend in writing BECE from the current 6 to maybe 3. Right. If we are able to do it 3, government will not be spending 200 million a year on BECE. It could be even half of the amount. It will also reduce the length of time we spend and also the stress level. Absolutely. These are conversations we want to trigger. There are various ideas around this, which we welcome. But the whole idea is that we can't maintain the BECE, which was serving as an entrance examination to second cycle education and school placement. And right. Today, we can't maintain the same form as it is because it is high stakes, and no one in this world uses high stakes examination just for the purpose of school placement. It's too bad.
And it's revealing if you're talking about aggregate 54 student also being in senior high school.
Everybody's qualified.
So now you don't even have to get a particular grade.
The reality is that, Alfred, if you read the NPP's manifesto of 2024, and we had engagement with political parties on this issue in 2024, NPP proposed that they were going to scrap BECE and replace it with a new school placement exam. Mm-hmm. The reality is that BECE has outlived its usefulness immediately free senior high school kicked in.
I see.
That's the reality. And so we are only trying to have a basis to determine who goes to category A or category B. And so because there's an examination called BECE, we still want to maintain it. But the reality is that we don't need it in that form. It can be a bit more reduced with less high stakes, yet still giving our education system an opportunity to fairly determine whether this student is an A student or this student is a B student, to enable them, know the category of senior high school that they have to attend or technical school that they have to attend.
As you indicated, you're just triggering a conversation, which is an important one for that matter. And the next phase of the basic education, taking into consideration what the BECE is not doing now. Thank you. Kofi Asare, Executive Director of the Africa Education Watch. There are divergent views on this, but the reality is that things have changed. Previously, you wouldn't have aggregate 54 students getting admission to a senior high school. That's not the case right now. So then what has to be the way going forward? We'll talk about it as we go on. But coming up next on Ghana Tonight, we'll come back to a matter related to education. But let's go to the Volta region, where in whole live right now as tensions halt plans to reopen the Central Mosque after resistance from the Zango community in there. But this is an issue that has been lingering for quite a while. It's not one that is new for most of you who have been following this matter. The Volta Regional Security Council has abruptly aborted plans to reopen the whole Central Mosque. RECSEC, led by the Volta Regional Minister James Gunu, visited the whole Zango this afternoon with the intent to reopen the mosque following a bond that was signed by the leaders of the feuding groups in that area. The move was, however, aborted when the team's engagement with the Zango community took a dramatic turn. Now, correspondent Faisal Abdul Idris is joining us on Zoom right now for a conversation on this matter. Faisal, appreciate you. And this is one that you've been keeping tabs on there, but can you run us through this latest development in the Zango area and the details on why the RECSEC had to abort the move to reopen the mosque? Hello, Faisal. Faisal, can you hear me?
Hello.
I can hear you. Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yes, I can.
I can hear you clearly. I was asking if you just run us through exactly what happened today, which led to the plans to reopen the mosque halted.
Yes, so this afternoon, the Volta Regional Minister led a delegation of the Volta Regional Security Council to the whole Zongo, which we are all aware that since January, the whole Central Mosque has been under lock following that shooting incident in December last year. Initially, when the mosque was closed, we were told that it was going to take 2 weeks. But today, the regional minister indicated to us that after the 2 weeks ultimatum that they gave, they did a review and an assessment and realized that it was not possible to reopen the mosque at the time. And so, after several other deliberations, yesterday, the leaders of the two feuding factions signed a bond of good behavior. And this only followed an application that the state had made at the court, requesting the two leaders to sign a bond of good behavior and commit to lasting peace in the Zongo. Following that bond signing, they agreed that they would proceed to reopen the mosque. But before they do so, they would engage the larger Zongo community. So this afternoon, the Regional Security Council met both factions in the Zongo and read out to them the outcomes of the consultations they held with both leaders of the feuding parties, including the bond they signed. Right after that, the decision was to proceed to reopen the mosque, only for questions to be asked as to who would be leading prayers at the mosque, and of course, who then is the Volta Regional Minister. Now, you'll recall that in November last year, the National Chief Imam was here in Ho to install one of the leaders, Alhaji Muniru Ali, as the Volta Regional Chief Imam. The Volta Regional Minister today reiterated that, of course, RECSEC has no mandate to determine who leads the Zongo community. It is a decision that the National Chief Imam has made, and for them, they would uphold that until there is otherwise any other determination, urging the parties to either seek answers from the office of the National Chief Imam or proceed to court. This very response from the Volta Regional Minister actually infuriated one part of the feuding parties, and in the ensuing encounter, the regional minister informed us that it was going to be difficult.
We ain't some who team course or channel so. My men was so Jemre. That's an so bad in the Dumbi Edomiania. Yabasan Asomo.